we're usually at our most fragile when we first start this business. And the reason you're most fragile is because you don't have a proof of concept yet. And so if the first deal or the second deal you're doing, if things go wildly off course, that breaks a lot of investors. And they literally just give up after that first bad deal. And so I hate to see that happen to new investors. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here. Another episode of Deal Destruction. I'm really excited for tonight's episode with Rany. Rany, how's it going?
It's good. It's good.
Awesome. So just confirm with me, but you're brand new to real estate investing, right? And you're looking at potentially taking down your first deal?
Yeah, exactly. Brand new. I've just been consuming as much as I can, and I'm just itching to take action, you know?
Awesome. I love it. So you actually shared a good amount of information here. So I'm going to bring up the one slide right now, but just kind of talk us through as I skim it and, let us know what were you thinking about this property and why is it attractive to you?
So for me, the reason it's attractive is I always wanted to be kind of my first deal to be a BRRRR. And I really like the idea of being able to go in and force value. So the fact that this is already triplex zoned in London, the desirable area, and for me that you can go in and kind of make that third unit and get that cash flow is kind of what really made me want to go for it. The only thing is I understand it's a huge kind of first deal, so that's why I decided to bring it to Deal Destruction to get an opinion of an expert.
All right. So I'm sure the fans at home are kind of watching as I scroll through the slide here, but I'm just going to quickly kind of discuss this deal. There's a lot of wow, this is 20 pages long. Okay, yeah, we're not going to go through all of it, but I actually am mildly familiar with this deal. I looked at it back maybe early 2019. Myself and Dylan McLaughlin checked this out. So this is actually a portfolio. And I know the guys that have tied up this property, and now they're just kind of piecemealing off a couple of the properties, and they're going to keep the rest of the portfolio for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, and correct me on anything you think I get wrong here, but so we're looking at $370,000 for a triplex, or a property that's zoned to triplex. Right now, the way it's set up, though, the basement unit's illegal, as in not legal height, but there's a way that you could rejig the current layout so that you could get back to a triplex if you want. And that's kind of what the wholesalers have mentioned in this section. And yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you can either mess around a little bit with the main floor or you can change up the upper floor. That's kind of the gist I got from it.
And then, so this is in the Bishop Helmut area. One of the nicest areas in London, Ontario. So are you an out-of-town investor, or are you going to be invest like a local?
So I'm actually out of town. I'm from Ajax, but for me, in this one, since it is my first deal, as I said, I'm super hungry, so I wouldn't mind driving down to London.
Gotcha. And yeah, this is one of the nicest neighborhoods for century-old homes. So definitely popular there. You can see it's really close to a lot of the amenities. So Western University is just kind of in the bottom left-hand corner of this map. You've got one of the main hospitals there. The other hospital, again, is just a little bit further to the south and the west of this map, but lots of interesting potential. And we can see they've got a ton of the comps listed here for us. I know they're kind of saying comps support a $700,000. If I had to guess just back of the envelope, I would say, yeah, between 6.25, 7.25 sounds pretty safe for a nice tuned up triplex in that area. So I don't necessarily disagree with what they're saying. For renovations, it looks like they've got about $155,000 total budgeted. Last I remember, this needed a lot of work, so definitely good to see that $155,000. And they've got some pretty detailed breakdowns here just on what the rents could look like, some other exit strategies if you wanted to go take it short-term rental versus long-term rentals, and then just some permit and zoning information. This is actually one of the best put together packages I think I've ever seen. So shout out to James, who I'm pretty sure did it. But okay, bunch of photos here just kind of showing how rough it is. So not gonna lie, for most first-time investors, this would be extremely scary. One thing that we should note here is I can just tell based upon the type of construction, the condition it's in, the fire separation between the existing units will have been compromised, right? Which means you'll have to do all new drywall, resilient channels, probably have to do some safe and sound insulation between the units. Not a big deal because you knew this property was going to have to be gutted anyway, so this is the time to do it. But essentially, we're starting with a blank slate, and we want to do new windows. We're probably going to do new mechanicals as well. The one thing I didn't necessarily check out was whether they said it needs all new electrical, but I'm going to guess it does. So, yeah, electrical, plumbing, okay. So I think 155,000 is reasonable. It really could be anywhere between 120 and 200 in my opinion, as far as what the renovations could be, just as back of the envelope. But let's jump over to the spreadsheet and tell me what are your hopes? What is your goal with this sort of deal?
This sort of deal, so if I were to bring in JV partners, just because again I'm not high net worth, if we can just lever up, go in, do it, and then if I can refinance and pull out like all of their money if possible, if not most of their money, and then if we can cash flow, I know 1% rule is hard to get in Canada in general, or like in our markets, but yeah, if we can cash flow anything from like 300 to 500 a month, I'd be happy with that starting off.
Okay, 300 to 500 a month cash flow total, plus 50% of property ownership. Is that what you're kind of aiming for?
Yeah,
like you want 50-50 JV? Okay. So I know they kind of had their numbers broke out there, but just kind of pitch me on, like, as if I was your potential money partner. Why do I want to do this?
Okay, so potential money partner. So the after repair value. So right now it's So the price of the house is 350,000. After repair value, we're going for like conservative at 650. So we'd be almost doubling the property. In terms of cash flow per unit, if we do 3 units, what I have here is the main unit could be rented for 1,300 plus utilities. The second unit would be 1,300 plus utilities, and then the biggest unit, which is the upper unit, would be 1,600 plus utilities.
And how many bedrooms in each unit?
What I have here, in 1 second. Sorry, just trying to pull it up.
Let's see.
They had it on one of the slides. I just can't find it. So the main floor unit is 2 bed, 1 bath.
Yep.
The upper unit is currently 2 bed, 1 bath. And the basement right now doesn't have anything, like it needs to be converted. It's not legal as of right now.
Okay, so they're essentially likely all going to be 2 bed, 1 bath units then. Okay. So gross rent's 4,200. Mm-hmm. What else should I know?
You should know expenses. So let's see here. So insurance is 400 per month. Hydro is 50. Property tax is 400. Then, in this case, would you want to know closing cost?
That would be more related to the purchase price, but yeah, give me closing costs.
About 7,700. And then I don't know if I can't see your screen very well, but the assignment fee is 20,000. The wholesaler fee.
I already included that. So, so insurance was $400 a month. Hydro, you said $50 a month.
I have it as 50.
Okay, and property taxes is 400. Something there doesn't sound right to me unless you're going to be doing 3 separate. Unless you're going to do 3 separate gas meters, because you're still going to have to pay. Oh, okay. So it looks like here, I don't know where you were grabbing your numbers, but on slide What
like
slide
a
are we
7.
on? Yeah, whichever one this is. It's got 200 for water and electricity, 75 for gas, 200 for insurance, and 400 for tax.
Yeah, I just was looking at my spreadsheet and I think I put in the number in the wrong column.
Okay, because these numbers make a lot more sense to me. So I'm going to put down 275 for utilities, and I'm going to put 200 for insurance, which sounds a lot more reasonable because 400 sounded pretty high to me. Property taxes at 400 makes sense. Nothing else really we need to focus on. And then what I'm also going to factor in here is property management, repairs and maintenance, and bad debt and vacancy. And so I personally like 10, 5, 5 for each of those. Each investor will have their own rules. I could understand going a little bit lower on this property just because by the time you're done, it's literally going to be a brand new property, right? So repairs and maintenance might be a bit lower for the first decade. Property management probably going to be a bit easier. Even bad debt and vacancy should be a bit lower. But in essence, before we get into debt service, I'm going to be expecting about 1715 in expenses right now based upon the numbers we put together. We've got insurance, utilities, property taxes. Don't think that we're missing anything there. So 1715. So essentially then that means before debt service. So before debt, our cash flow is going to be looking like 2,500. Okay. So then kind of circling back, what are you putting 150,000 in, or what they have 155,000 as their renovations?
Yeah, I guess like I'd go with that, and then if I could do anything myself, but again, I'm brand new, so like it would be up to my comfort level with what I can do myself.
Yeah, and
If cosmetic,
definitely the idea of doing some of the stuff yourself is cool, but
yeah,
understand that very rarely do we want to cheat a deal by making it only work if we're free labor. So you also don't want to get too hung up doing that. So let's just look at what our total cost base is going to be. So we're at 532 right now, total cost. And the only thing that we haven't factored in is holding costs, right? So we'll come back to that in a second. So essentially, if you're doing 650 as your ARV, if we're doing an 80% loan to value with your new mortgage, right, you're going to get 520,000 in new proceeds. So we can see that it's probably not going to work as a perfect BRRRR, but it might work as a light BRRRR, right, where you don't necessarily have to keep a lot of the money into it. Now for holding and just for holding costs, had you estimated those?
yeah. So I have here 7,700 for closing costs.
Yeah, and then for holding costs, had you associated anything?
No, I have not.
So holding costs, right, are the costs that we're going to be covering during the renovations and stuff, right? So you got to pay property taxes while you're renovating it. You'll have to pay your debt, interest, things of that nature. One thing to be aware about, right? This property is not in what they would call livable condition. So that's something that's something that's going to make this deal difficult for you, Rany, right? So when a property is not in living condition, it means it doesn't have a bathroom, it doesn't have a kitchen, or it doesn't have a roof, or it doesn't have some of the utilities necessary for it to be livable. Those things don't have to look nice, but they do have to exist. Obviously, this property won't have it. I'm going to guess it hasn't had running water for a while, may have not even had electricity for a while. Probably hasn't had heat for 1 or 2 years. And again, that's why we're seeing like the peeling and stuff, right? So pretty much it's a complete gut job. So one thing you do need to know about complete gut jobs is it's normally going to be difficult to get traditional financing. So then a property like this, you may have to buy it in cash, or you may have to get hard money lenders in order to pull a deal off like this. So one thing to be aware of, that you may need a money partner with deep pockets, or you're going to need a money partner with good connections or relationships to a private lender who's willing to lend on a deal that's in this condition, right? That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
All right. So because of those factors, usually your holding costs are going to be a lot higher, right? Because that money that you're trying to get access to is probably going to cost more. So if I just had to really quickly do back of the envelope number here, I'm going to take the 370 you're buying the property for. I'm going to assume that you can maybe get a like 65% loan to value. So like the lender will maybe give you 65% of the purchase price, and you'll have to come up with the rest as cash. So just a quick note here. And I'm just kind of doing this because I know this is your first deal and because you're a Project Mayhem grad. So normally I might not go this deep on a deal analysis, but I want to do it for you. So if we're looking, sorry, that's the wrong number or the wrong word. If we're looking at cash needed for a deal, I don't know if you calculated that out yet, but essentially we're going to need the down payment here. We're going to need the rental costs. We're going to need the closing costs. And then we're also going to want our holding costs. Plus any other sorts of like little miscellaneous, right? Then we've got our debt. So our debt is going to be the 240,000 here. So this is our debt. This is our down payment. So in essence, what we're looking at is needing about a total of the 532.7, right? That's over here. So then for holding costs, I'm going to just assume that you're likely going to have to borrow at maybe 8, 10, 12% on this deal, unless you find a money partner that just has the cash to buy it. So if I was going to operate under 10%, I'm literally just going to take 10% of the money you're borrowing, the 240, forgot my equal sign, the 240, and then how long do you plan to own this property, right? Again, this is a really big gut job. So I would expect 6 months to a year to pull off these renovations. Because it's your first time doing it, I'd want to plan to do it for a year, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have about 24,000 in my holding costs associated with the interest. And then just because we're trying to do this relatively fast, I'm going to put $10,000 in as a placeholder for property taxes, utilities, and any other miscellaneous stuff for that 1 year of ownership. Again, it might be a bit higher, might be a bit lower, but it's probably not going to be dramatically different. So in total, now we're going to be about 566,000 all into the property, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to need about 326,000 in cash from our money partner, and they're going to need to get us a mortgage of about 240. And again, that's at a 65% loan to value. So just kind of looking at where this leaves us now, I'll maybe just color this so people can tell what I'm doing. So where this leaves us, essentially, when we get the ARV of 650 and the new mortgage of 520, we're going to be 566, 750 into the property, and we're going to get a new mortgage of 520. We're going to have a new mortgage of 520, which means that we're going to still end up having 46,750 left in the property. So this is going to be our cash tied up. So in a perfect world, this would be something that your money partners find leaving in the deal, right? Now, again, there is a good chance that you might be able to have this become 700,000. And then all of a sudden those numbers look way different and they've only got 6,000 tied into the deal. But I like the fact that you started with a 650 as your conservative ARV. That way you've got a little bit of extra wiggle room if things go sideways. So now let's go back down to the rent here and see what this is going to look like. So before debt, our cash flow was looking at 2,400. Now I'm going to use what I call the 500-100 rule. And so what that is for every $100,000 of money we borrow, if we assume that we're borrowing at a 3.5% interest rate on a 25-year amortization, that's going to give us $500 monthly payments for every 100,000 we borrow, right? So if you're buying this property for 650, you're doing 520 as your new mortgage. Essentially what that means is to finance the 520,000, I'm just going to take my 500 and times it by the number of 100,000s I need to borrow, right? In this case, 5.2. So that means my monthly mortgage payment under this assumption is going to be 2,600. So where that's going to leave me is essentially break even from a cash flow perspective once we factor in everything. Now, odds are you can likely borrow at a slightly better interest rate than this. So I wouldn't be surprised if once you factor in a better interest rate, you might be able to get it to cash flow. But understand that really the only way you're cash flowing is because of the really low cost of debt. So normally what I would do in that scenario is go back and just double check all my assumptions. Is there any way I can get more in gross rents? for the price that you've got here and what I understand the units to be, if they're all 2 beds, 1 baths, I think that that's fair market. You might be able to squeeze out another $50 or $100 a unit, but nothing dramatic. So that makes sense to me. Are there expenses that we can reduce? Not really, because again, you've already outsourced or like offloaded most of the utility costs because all the tenants are going to pay for their own electrical now. Property taxes pretty much are always going to be the landlord's domain. Insurance is what it is. Property management, you want to bake that into your calculations because even if you don't want to do it today, certainly fast forward to 5-10 years from now, once you've built up your real estate empire, and you're definitely going to want to have a property manager managing it and not be doing it yourself. So I think this is kind of where it lands, man. So if we were to adjust this for what I think you could probably get your mortgage payments to be, I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to land in that $300 to $500 a month in cash flow, because you might be able to get away with, $400, $450 a month as your cost per 100. And in that case, that's going to kind of take you to where you want to be. So for me, this is an interesting deal, but there is a lot of moving parts for a first deal. So I definitely wouldn't encourage you to do this deal unless you were doing it with, say, an experienced money partner who maybe used to be an active person that was willing to take on a bit of a mentorship role with you. Now, do I think there's money to be made here? Yes, absolutely. I think there is money to be made in this deal, but it is a big project. And one of the things that scares me about new investors getting into big projects is how resilient are you? How robust are you?
Hey YouTube, have you guys been enjoying the sponsorship splash page we have at the end of every YouTube video now? Do you guys like it? Are you a business owner or maybe just a real estate influencer or investor and you'd like more exposure to potentially my YouTube audience? Well, now you can help support my YouTube channel as well as grow your personal brand or your business brand by sponsoring my splash page. It's really not that expensive, and if you want to find out more information, it'll be all below in the video description down. So just go grab it, reach out to my team, and let's chat.
But it is a big project. And one of the things that scares me about new investors getting into big projects is how resilient are you? How robust are you? Because a lot of us, we're usually at our most fragile when we first start this business. And the reason you're most fragile is because you don't have a proof of concept yet. And so if the first deal or the second deal you're doing, if things go wildly off course, that breaks a lot of investors. And they literally just give up after that first bad deal. And so I hate to see that happen to new investors. So I often do lean towards, perhaps nudging them towards wanting to do a single rather than a home run. This is kind of like a home run or a grand slam versus just like a simple safe deal. Now, one way you might look at trying to reduce the risk on this is, what if I was just to flip this property? And so again, in that case, you're not going to be left with a rental property that kind of breaks even. Instead, you're going to be able to walk away with presumably about $100,000 in profit, right? The difference between the 650 and the 566 that you're all in for. Now, what I would encourage you to think about is, I think this project would take you 8 months to a year to do. So what's the return on time there? Well, if you're doing this 50-50 with a joint venture partner, $100,000 profit, you guys split it 50-50. Now you're getting $50,000. So what does that look like after a year's worth of effort? Yeah. Well, it's not terrible. You made $4,000 a month, but at the same time, you took an entire year, all your energy as well. That assumes everything goes right. Now, again, we did bake in a relatively conservative ARV, so there's a chance there's an even bigger spread. But I suspect that for a first deal, you're going to be a lot more comfortable getting into something that has a 3 to 6 month turnaround time, just so you can get that proof of concept, get that confidence under your belt. Because once you got that initial credibility, it becomes so much easier to move faster in this business. But if you get into a complicated deal on your first deal and things go sideways, it can quickly become a quagmire. So those are kind of my thoughts, man. Yeah. What do you think?
Awesome. No, I definitely like seeing it broken down like this definitely makes a lot more sense. especially with the cash flow portion at the bottom. And I didn't even think about the flip side of it, like just flipping it, because I've been obsessed with like just the one strategy, right?
Yeah, and that's something that honestly most investors are going to fall victim to when they're brand new to this. But the key is understanding that real estate's just an investment vehicle. We're not married to burring or flipping or wholesaling. We're just in the business of doing real estate because it makes us money. And so we're going to look at any property and every opportunity with what's the highest, most optimal use of it. And sometimes it maybe won't even be a strategy we want to employ, in which case we might assign the deal or wholesale it or bird dog fee it or just get a favor out of it by letting someone else know about it. But I think it really is important that you don't become married to a strategy before you understand your why and what your goals are. A lot of investors start off with, I want to burr in London, Ontario, because that's where Matt's from and he's a YouTuber and he made money doing it. But my goals may not be your goals, right? So when I originally started investing in real estate, my primary goal was, hey, I live a very frugal lifestyle. If I can make about $2,000 a month in passive income, plus live for free in one of my rental units, I could literally live a lifestyle I'd be happy to live for the rest of my life. And so my goal was, let's get cash flow as fast as possible to that $2,000 amount so I have the confidence to go and quit my job, right? And that worked well for me based upon my goals at that time. Now, with time, my goals evolved and my needs, wants, and desires have changed as well. But it's really important that you understand clearly what your big why is, what goal is going to get you there, and then pick the strategy in the city based upon that, rather than starting with a strategy or a city and trying to shoehorn it then into what you actually want to accomplish.
So then my question was, when you're first starting, how long did you take to educate yourself via like your goals or the city or the strategy? Are you from London? That's why you just chose London, or?
Sure. So again, like a lot of people, I didn't start off with an optimal approach because I was new to this. I didn't have any mentors. There wasn't online free information for Canadians. It was only Americans before I started my YouTube channel. So I think what I did and what I tell people to do today are two very different things. So I'm going to primarily focus on the latter. What I tell people to do today is do Dean Graziosi's 7 levels deep exercise. 7 levels deep why exercise. And that's something that was introduced to him by Joe Stump. And essentially all it is just you're literally asking yourself the question why 7 times in a row. And that may sound silly, but it's actually one of the most powerful concepts I could think of. So when most people come to me, they're like, hey, I want to be a real estate investor and make money. I'm like, cool. But what does that even mean? So why do you want to be a real estate investor? I want to be a real estate investor and make money. Cool. Why do you want to make money? I want to make money because I need money to live. Cool. Well, why do you need money to live? Well, I need money to live because I hate my job and I want to quit it, but I still need to live. Cool. Why do you hate your job? Because it takes me away from my friends or my families or my true passion, or I don't care about the job, or I actually just think the job is evil, whatever. Cool. And as we continue to peel back those layers and keep asking the question why, that's when we really get to the crux or the real motivation, or what I like to consider an emotional nerve. And once you hit an emotional nerve, it becomes so easy to succeed because you really understand how doing these things gets you to your big why. And so for a lot of people, the why does need to be connected to an emotional nerve, right? And that's the value in going those 7 levels deep. Now, once you go 7 levels deep, let's say you decide that you want to produce cash flows so that you never have to work at a day job because your parents hated it and you saw how it impacted their marriage and their family life and da. Okay, cool. Then the next question becomes, how much money do you need to not have a job? And then for most people, I'm going to pick an arbitrary amount, but oftentimes $5,000 gets thrown around at me because often that will get you to about the median income for a Canadian. So it makes sense. You should probably be able to be happy off of what the average Canadian makes. So $60,000 a year, $5,000 a month. So then what we do is, okay, I want to produce $5,000 a month in passive income so I don't have to have a job. Now, what ways can we achieve that? Well, we can become a private lender, or we can be a cash flowing investor, right? And there's other strategies as well, but those are two of the primary ones. And so if we start focusing now on what does that look like, I'm just going to open this up again.
Yep.
So if we were to do a quick exercise here on trying to make, I want to make $5K a month passively. Again, we can either become cash flow investors or we could become money lenders. Now, if we're operating under the assumption of money lending, we know we want to make $60,000 a year. Well, then the next question simply becomes, how much money do you need to lend out to make $60,000 a year? Well, the average person can do hard money lending to, say, guys like you that want to take on projects like you just showed me, and they can probably charge between 10, 12, 14% per year in order to do that deal. And they might be able to charge a little bit of a lender's fee and make you pay all their costs as well. So in that case, let's go with something relatively conservative and say that you can earn 10% per year. Boom. Well, in that case, you need to save up $600,000 in cash to hit your goal. Well, if you were to say do flips like this, how many flips like this would you have to do? Well, if we assume you took on a 50-50 partner every time and you could make $50,000 per flip, then what that's going to tell us is you're going to need to do 12 flips before you can hit your goal, right? But after doing 12 flips, you'll have made enough profit to be able to fund that goal. On the flip side, for a cash flow investor, well, what do you need? I still need $60,000. But I'm probably going to talk about that in a monthly manner instead. So I need $5,000 a month. So then the next question becomes, okay, well, how much cash flow can you get per property? Or how many units do you need in order to generate that cash flow? Here in London, Ontario, it's pretty usual that you can get about $200 cash flow per unit. So in that case, now I'm simply going to go and look at 5,000 divided by 200, and boom, I need 25 units. And now let's say I have no money and I'm in your situation. Well, maybe you need to double that and take on 50-50 partners, right? And they're going to be the ones that qualify for the mortgage and bring the down payment. So now the question becomes, do you want to be the money lender or do you want to be the cash flow investor? And that's where we can start to explore some of our goals further. Hey man, I legit, if I was to make $5,000 a month, I never need anything again. I'm a peace out. Cool. Well, it sounds like money lender is probably the right choice for you, right? Like, because you don't really need a lot more. Or, hey man, $5,000 a month sounds cool, but that's really just the starting point. I actually want to keep going after that. Okay, well, maybe cash flow investor makes more sense then. And again, it's a matter of then looking at your personal inventory, what your priorities are, how fast you want to get there. All those come into play in regards to which strategy you should focus on. Then once you understand the strategy, then we can find the markets that help you achieve that, right? So that's kind of how I like to approach goal setting. Start with why, find the emotional nerve, then reverse engineer what you need to accomplish it, then create SMART goals with milestones around it, right? So the next step we would do in the scenario I just laid out for you, let's say you pick the cash flow choice. Cool. We know we need 25 units. Hey man, I got no money, no credit. Okay, we need 50 units and we're going to do it with a 50-50 partner. Well then, how fast do you want to do it? Man, I need to do this in 5 years or less. Okay, so that means we need to acquire about 10 units a year. So again, we just break that out. What does 10 units a year look like? Well, it looks like about whatever, 2.5 units per quarter. Okay, so now you need to buy about a duplex. Buy a duplex one quarter, a triplex the next quarter, and if you alternate for the next 5 years, boom, you'll hit your goal. Or alternatively, I decide I'm going to flip. Awesome. How badly do you want to do it? Man, I want to do this so bad. Well, is there any way that you can do 12 flips in a year? No, I've never done a flip before. That seems way too much. Okay, what about 12 flips in 2 years? Maybe. Okay, let's explore that a bit further. Build out a roadmap. If we start doing it and we find out we can do it faster than we wanted, great. We can either decide to then put in less effort and we'll still get there on time, or we can decide to keep putting in the same effort and get there sooner. If we realize that, holy shit, this is a lot more work than I thought it was, turns out it's going to take me a lot longer, again, we can either focus on, is there a way I can change what I'm doing to compress time? Or am I comfortable with just having to take longer? Or can I just work harder to get there faster? And again, this becomes an iterative process. And I recommend people in general check in on themselves every quarter. So you kind of set your intentions for 3 months, and then you're just going to ruthlessly execute for 3 months and not second guess yourself. After that, you're going to come back, do your after action report, really break down, do your deal analysis, and you're just, where do things stand? And then if you're on pace, great, we can just keep doing it. If something doesn't look right, then that's the time to tweak it. Where way too often people are constantly questioning themselves at every step. And what happens is you're just constantly playing this game with yourself of analysis paralysis, and you never end up getting into doing a deal.
Yeah, that hit a nerve. I feel that, especially the idea of starting with where you want to be and then working back goal wise. Like, I get it. Like, I like how you broke it down this time, for me, because I've heard it a lot. It's very easy to be abstract when you talk, but to see it in a spreadsheet is way different.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you agreeing to be part of Deal Destruction. And again, for anyone that's watching this is just an example of how Deal Destruction goes. Again, my whole intentions behind this series is simply to be able to provide the mentorship, the advice, and the guidance that I wish I would have had when I first started out doing my deals. And the whole trade-off here, guys, is as long as you're willing to let me share the call, I'm willing to do it for free and post it on my YouTube channel. So appreciate you doing this, Rany. Good luck on your analysis. I do think that this deal's a bit intimidating, in my opinion, for your first deal. But if you decide it's right for you, you do you.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, man.
Take care.